You are watching Access LaPorte County, Channel 97. Coming up next, the Michigan City Plan Commission meeting of June 28th. You can get more information for this meeting by going to www.accesslaportecounty.org. Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, June 28th, 2022 at 6:05, and this is the regular meeting of the Michigan City Plan Commission. Next item is roll call.
Mr. Ross Balling.
Here.
Mr. Fitzpatrick. Mr. Granquist.
Here.
Mr. Gresham.
Here.
Mr. Klender.
Here.
Mr. Lashford.
Here.
Mr. Zimmer.
Here.
And Attorney Hill.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Next item is to approve the agenda for this evening. If there's no objections, I'll take a motion.
So
Motion.
move.
Second.
Mr. Balling.
Yes.
Mr. Granquist.
Yes.
Mr. Gresham.
Yes.
Mr. Klender.
Yes.
Mr. Lashford.
Yes.
Mr. Zimmer.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item is to approve the minutes from our last meeting, which was in May on the 26th. I assume everybody had a chance to review those. If there's no changes or questions, I would take a motion to approve them.
If there are no motions for any changes, I would move for approval as submitted.
I second. Mr. Balling.
Yes.
Mr. Granquist.
Yes.
Mr. Gresham.
Yes.
Mr. Klender.
Yes.
Mr. Lashford.
Yes.
And Mr. Zimmer.
I'll abstain. I wasn't here.
Absolutely. Motion approved.
So our first petition this evening is 901-22, 1 and 2. I think this is a carryover from previous meetings.
I'll introduce it. This is a request by Marquette Mall Properties and Sterling Capital Limited for primary and secondary plat approval for a minor subdivision located at parcel 46-05-476-012.000-009 at 4027 Franklin Street. They'll be represented by Mr. Tony Hendricks. And I do believe this is continued by May, and then I think Chris Willoughby is going to represent them as well. So I'll hand the floor over to you.
Good evening, Christopher Willoughby of Brady Nelson and Janes here on behalf of M. Jones Properties. And tonight I have one of the principals with me, Brandon Jones, as well as Tony Hendricks, who will handle any technical questions you have. Was the surveyor and did most of the heavy lifting on the items before you. And again, we're also here through, as Mr. York indicated, on behalf of Marquette Mall Properties Limited and Sterling Capital LP Limited Partnership, who are the owners of the parent parcel. And I have a letter of authorization that we've submitted to council, as well as all of our notices to turned out to be quite a list for that parent parcel of the abutting adjoining owners, as well as our notice of publication. So I will defer just to make sure that our notice is in order, but otherwise, if you'd like me to continue, I will. So.
You'd like me to respond?
I would.
Yes, certainly. Mr. Willoughby very kindly provided well in advance copy of all the notice documentation. I find it to be in order. He satisfied our requirements, and you're free to proceed and hear this matter.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Hale.
luckily at some point, and it doesn't happen often, the code, this is one of those processes that the code intends to simplify the process. What we're here is asking for a minor subdivision of an outlet approximately 1 acre in size that fronts Franklin Street. It's the northwest corner of Franklin and 421, generally between the little new strip mall that's there and Walgreens. As I think most of you are aware, the Jones family, Buffalo Wild Wings, has been a good citizen, a good company, and looking to build new and invest in a property that it's sorely in need of it. So the synergies there work out. Before we feel that this process is pretty straightforward in terms of checking the boxes of what we need to do, and then defer to any technical questions you may have. But again, we are asking that you approve a primary and secondary and minor subdivision of this outlot. We've verified that our notices are appropriate. We've submitted and had our concept plan and administrative review. We believe that the plan for this parcel generally complies with the standards of the subdivision ordinance, including the provisions of the minor subdivision ordinance, and otherwise materially comply with all material requirements as evidenced by our submissions. It was noted in the original submission that we were seeking some variances, which that creates a little bit more of a process, but we believe since that time that sidewalks indeed are not required, and we are otherwise not asking for any variances. So from our position, that makes things a little easier, and yours definitely a little easier because you have a little regime that you have to follow in certain findings, additional findings that you specifically. So with that said, I will keep it brief and defer to any questions or on the technical aspects or procedurally that you might have, but otherwise we respectfully request that you consider approval of the primary and secondary plat. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Willoughby. We'll take the reports first and then entertain questions and comments. So Skylar, if you want to do yours.
Yes. So this is a staff report for case 901-22. Commonly known, I think the subdivision will be known as subdivision 4027 Franklin Street. It's a minor subdivision. The petitioner is requesting a primary and secondary plat approval for a minor subdivision, 4027 Franklin Street. More commonly, what we would refer to as the Marquette Mall parking lot. Staff analysis: the property in question is an old mall with a large parking lot. The petitioner is requesting to subdivide a smaller outlot from the larger mother lot. This lot is located along Franklin Street frontage area. The lot meets the minimum square footage and has adequate frontage to be subdivided. The petitioner, as noted by Mr. Willoughby, also requested a sidewalk waiver. And if you look at in our section of section 06.05, sidewalk and non-motorized systems for a subdivision code, we exclude administrative and minor subdivisions. So we cannot require that. Staff recommendations. The planning staff has reviewed the proposed subdivision and finds the request to be in compliance with all applicable subdivision ordinance standards and recommends that the Planning Commission approve the primary and secondary request pending submission of a corrected primary plat. I just need some corrections. That's all. Specifically in deed of dedication, Tony, front and side yard building lines are hereby established and shown on this plat. There aren't any. Just exclude that, and then we're not dedicating anything. So we just need to exclude that cert down there on the left. That's it. Those are my only comments.
Thank you, Mr. Hale.
I would say once I get that in, if you guys vote to approve, we would just sign off.
Thank you. My attorney report is for petition number 901-22, subsection 1 and subsection 2. I think it's important to note that the petitioner, subdividers, and property owners are three entities: Marquette Mall Properties Limited and Sterling Capital LP. They own the Marquette Mall let's call it parent parcel. And the third property owner, subdivider, petitioner is M. Jones Properties LLC. They purchased a small piece comprising approximately 1 acre from the other two, that is Marquette Mall Properties and Sterling Capital, in January. It was recorded here at the recorder's office in LaPorte County. You have a copy of that deed in your materials, so you would have seen it. So now we are subdividing this to officially create the small lot as a subdivision. It is appropriate that it's a minor subdivision because we're just creating one lot. Even though the property was conveyed, we're now going to subdivide it. And so we have those two parcels that are involved, the parent parcel and the purchased parcel of 1 acre that is being cut off or subdivided off. And that has its own parcel number. You'll see in my report, I point that out and I give you those parcel numbers if it's important. It is important that the petitioner and Mr. Willoughby very kindly provided to us a letter of authorization from Marquette Mall Properties Limited and Sterling Capital LLP, whereby they're giving M. Jones Properties and Mr. Willoughby specifically the power to represent them and to push or to seek approval of this subdivision. So that box has been checked. So what we end up with then is just the petitioners requesting a minor subdivision approval. It's 1 and 2 on our petition number because they're asking for primary and secondary approval. This body has done that many times in the past. That is granted for a minor subdivision approval of both the primary and secondary plats at the same meeting. When it's so simple as something that is before you, there's no real reason to hold up. There aren't going to be any building permits. There aren't going to be any changes. There's no dedication. It's a rather straightforward subdivision. However, following review by Mr. Schuyler and his department, this body is to hold a public hearing, consider the minor subdivision request, and determine if it meets the requirements of this ordinance, the subdivision ordinance. My understanding of Mr. York's report is that he's found that it does. And so I will just state that your decision tonight is primarily to determine if it meets with the requirements of the subdivision ordinance, and you may grant approval. You may grant approval, but only with modifications that would bring it within the requirements of the subdivision ordinance, or you may reject it because it doesn't meet those requirements. I would just add one other thing. I think it's important that the materials that are included in the record of this matter include that letter of authorization. And you'll note in my report that I've indicated that that is to be part of the materials that are in this file. Otherwise, I think you have the materials you need to make a determination. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hale. So I'll open it to commission members to ask any questions, make any comments.
If I could.
Yes, please.
So just a couple clarifications here then. Both Mr. Hale, Mr. York mentioned sidewalks. And so now we're saying that's not a part of it because technically it's not a part of the minor subdivision. So we can just kind of strike that from our thought process here.
Yeah, we specifically exclude in the reference, it is specifically excludes administrative subs, which we do by plat committee. They're small transfers of land, things like that. If we need right of way, small transfers of land. And it specifically references minor subs.
Okay.
And it doesn't say how big the lot is, how much, it says minor subs.
Got it.
I would assume that's probably, like a major subdivision, you're subdividing, 3 or more lots. You're building, sometimes you're building new roads. Obviously, you wouldn't want to build a road that's subpar
Sure.
theoretically nowadays.
Does that also include landscaping requirements that were mentioned by Mr.
So
Hill?
landscaping are part of the zoning code. And this board cannot do that. That would be a Board of Zoning Appeals because it's
Okay.
part of and it specifically references in 06 and that's or in another section that this board cannot hear or cannot modify. I'm paraphrasing, cannot modify anything that is a purview of the Board of Zoning Appeals
So they would need to go in front of the BZA to
at that
get a
point in time.
variance.
Yeah, to
Okay.
get a variance, it would be a variance at that point in time. Now they could get a variance prior to coming to this board, but you could also do it in a flip flop as well.
Sure.
Typically, you get a variance before coming to this board if you needed a variance from like a setback line or a modification of a lot line, or you'd be granted something like that, like to subdivide. But yeah, they could go afterwards as well.
Got it. So as such, is there any modification needed to the actual petition since both of these items aren't applicable to this board?
I don't think so. I think we're okay as long as we address them publicly. I'll defer to Mr. Hill on that one. That question.
I'm not aware of any modifications that would have to be made to bring the requested minor subdivision into compliance with our subdivision.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, we're withdrawing any reference to those. So
Okay,
I think that will
excellent.
clear it up for you too.
I just didn't want to, I wanted to make sure we didn't have anything in there that could hold up the process. So, out of curiosity, is this petition fall under the new or old petition process?
So when they first applied for this, which I would say they were vested at that point in time, it was done under the old process.
Okay.
They still had to notify quite a few people with
Sure.
even the old
There's a lot of
process.
touching. Yep.
Absolutely. It's a big lot. So I feel, and I guess I would ask Mr. Hill, I feel like they were vested underneath the old process because they did apply in the timely manner under the old process.
Okay. Past that, the technical aspects I'm satisfied on. I just would like to say, Mr. Jones and his group, I think if I ate at your old location anymore, I'd probably have a conflict of interest. But I would like to say that I think this is a great opportunity for a very underutilized property. I know this location gets a lot of mention locally, so to see something productive, useful going up in this location, I'm thrilled to see that. We also don't get a lot of existing businesses in front of this group. So I'd like to thank you for, working with school organizations and lots of the teams in town and all that kind of stuff. I think your group is very friendly to the community, and I absolutely love that on a personal basis. And that's what I'd like to talk about. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Gresham. Skylar, just going back to the question of sidewalks again for a minute. So, in the past, we talked about, that there's some future big plans for what's going to happen to the 421 corridor and, the whole Marquette Mall property and all that. So we don't know what any of that is, but if in the future that we do want to add sidewalks, how is that happen?
Sure. I can address some of that. So it's the same. It'd be similar to what we're trying to do now. We're going to have to probably work with Mr. Jones to figure out a way to do that. It may not be a sidewalk. It may be a pathway more. Maybe it's behind the building rather than in the front. We always think of sidewalks traditionally, but in the 421 area, we've had to think kind of non-traditionally because there isn't much right of way sometimes. So fortunately, the project we're working on right now in the South TIF down there, we do have the opportunity to acquire some property. We're putting in we're going to be putting in some sidewalks. We haven't come this far north yet, but it would be done in a similar manner as what we've kind of contemplated in the past with
So on a parcel by parcel basis.
Absolutely. Yeah, and sometimes we have a lot of right of way, and sometimes we don't have any, and sometimes those no. Sometimes when there's none, it's like, do we get an easement for a sidewalk, or do we come up with something non-traditional? Well, maybe it's a pathway, maybe it's in the backside. There's a lot of land here, as we all know. So it could be more of a non-traditional sidewalk. Maybe it's a pathway that is for bikes and people rather than just up against. It's probably not the most what's the word I want to look for? The best thing to most comfortable thing to walk next to 421 on a sidewalk right up against it. So it may be an opportunity to do something a little different.
Thank you.
The goal is always we need more pedestrian access down there. We need to keep focusing on that.
Right.
It's not just here; it's all the way down.
Right.
I would say. Yeah.
That was the point of my question.
Yeah. Figured it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments from commission members? Any, oh, yes.
May I ask Mr. Willoughby a question?
Yes, please.
You set that out. You want that part of your filing?
Oh, yes, that we were trying to make sure that we comply because as we interpret the code and in discussions with Mr. Hale, a plat of the parent parcel is required. So thank you for bringing that up. And I did set that in front of them as requested, but I agree.
I just want then our record to show that as part of the materials in this file, as part of the record tonight, there is this additional survey. It's dated 6/2/22. That makes it rather distinct. So we'll know what one we're talking about, but we'll add it to the record.
Great, thank you. At this point, I'll open it to the public for any questions, comments related to this petition. Okay, not hearing or seeing anybody, that public comment is closed. And so then if there's no further questions or comments, we'll take a motion on this petition.
I would move to approve this minor subdivision petition numbers 901-22-1 and 2, finding that it meets our zoning ordinances.
So there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second. Oops, sorry. I'm gonna ask one question.
I'm sorry, was your motion to approve both primary and second?
That is correct. If that's
Just making sure.
okay.
Mr. Balling,
Yes.
Mr. Granquist,
Yes.
Mr. Gresham,
Yes.
Mr. Klender,
Yes.
Mr. Lashford,
Yes.
and Mr. Zimmer.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Congratulations, gentlemen, and best of luck on the project.
Thank you very much.
Bring it tomorrow. Stamp it, sign it.
These days, you can never say. Okay, our second petition this evening is 900-22. And who is going to be introducing this one?
I'll introduce it, and then I'll hand it over to the petitioners. The request is by WP21 LLC for primary plat approval for a 14-lot major subdivision known as Beechwood subdivision, located on approximately 2.71 acre parcel, situated generally between Jake Lane on the north, Washington Park Boulevard on the south, Lorraine Road on the west, east of residential lots, and Childers Lane on the east. They'll be represented by Mr. John Doyle and Associates, Survey and Engineers. tonight. I'll hand the floor off to John and Daryl.
And I am attorney for the petitioner.
I'm sorry, Dan.
I will step down and recuse myself from the commission to step down and make the initial presentation.
I'm sorry, Dan. I forgot about that. And Attorney Dan Granquist will be representing them as well.
So we still have a quorum when Dan steps down, correct?
1, 2,
5 people.
So
So-
there still is a quorum, but it has to be a unanimous vote at this point in time. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
unanimous vote.
Good afternoon, Dan.
I am Dan Granquist, attorney representing WP 21 LLC. We have the principal here, Zark Rivko. We have engineer and surveyor Doyle, John Doyle, and Daryl from the engineering office there. This is a petition for primary plat approval. If you may recall, back in April, there was the presentation for the concept plan and the development plan. This is in the zoning district A1, 3, or 5, and it required the concept plan and a special development plan for that. This is a vacant land just south of the Beach Walk subdivision there, right off of Washington Park Boulevard. An exciting opportunity to develop some infill lots in the city. 14 lots are proposed right along Washington Boulevard on the north side there. The concept plan and development plan were approved back in April. I was unfortunately otherwise disposed and not able to attend, so we appreciate and thank them for appearing without me at that time. The plan was approved, and this is very much very similar, the same plat for 14 acres, and you have the plat before you. I also will comment that this is a petition on the new process. Some commissioners have inquired about that. I believe I'm the guinea pig to begin that process. It's a lot more onerous than the process previously when we submitted the original concept plan and development plan. But you have a lot of notes, a lot of information there. And without rehashing all of that and presenting that, I will open it up for any questions for me from the petition aspect or from the engineering aspect there. But we do request your unanimous approval of this primary plat there.
Thank you, Mr. Granquist. Let's hear Skylar and Mr. Hale's, Mr. York's and Mr. Hale's reports, and then we'll discuss.
This is a report on case number 922, or I'm sorry, 900-22 Beechwood Major Subdivision. This is for primary plat. They're requesting primary plat approval to create a new 14-lot subdivision located along Washington Park Boulevard. Staff analysis: the property in question is currently vacant and was previously subdivided. The surrounding uses are single-family residential and are zoned R1E to the north, south, and west, and M2 industrial to the east of the site. Joint zoning ordinance 04.04 building dimensional requirements, subsection I, standards applicable to R1E district, subsection 1, subdivision of land. Any subdivision or re-subdivision of land shall require a concept plan, followed by a development plan, followed by a primary plat for review and approval by the Planning Commission at a public hearing in compliance with the requirements of the 1400 series of Indiana Code 36-7-4 prior to submission of an application for primary plat review. So the reason I mentioned that is that they've been through concept plan. You approved concept plan and development plan on April 26th with a condition of reviewing of drainage with the sanitary district, which I believe the surveyor has done to satisfaction, because they came back and said that they have no issues with the submission as presented. Tonight, the petitioner is before the Plan Commission to ask for primary plat approval. The plan is still to move forward with 14 lots, and drainage has been reviewed by the sanitary district. The petitioner has also provided a traffic study completed by Premier Engineers, which concluded that the development will not produce any appreciable impact on the existing traffic conditions. No modifications to traffic controls will be required as well. It should be noted that the street width at this location is 56 feet of right-of-way and approximately 22 feet of pavement and 2 lanes of travel. Sidewalks are required to be installed for all major subdivisions. On April 18th, the petitioner did participate in the Development Review Committee, and there were no concerns about the utility connections or proposed subdivision. There is a permanent 20-foot sanitary easement between lots 6 and 7 that will service the subdivision. Sanitary also recommended that it preferred the bioretention areas as shown on the proposed plat. Staff has reviewed the subdivision and recommends approval of the primary plat. There are a couple corrections to be made on this plat, but we'll talk about those later.
Thanks, Mr. York. Mr. Hale?
My report regarding petition number 900-22 sub 3, primary plat for Beechwood subdivision. The petitioner and owner of the property is WP 21 LLC. The engineer surveyor is John A. Doyle and Associates. The attorney and presenter was Dan Granquist. The request tonight is a major subdivision of an approximate 2.71 acre parcel of land situated just south of the southernmost section of Beach Walk between Jake Lane on the north, Washington Park Boulevard on the south, Loran Road on the west, and Childers Lane on the east. I think the property is properly identified in your material. So I would start by saying we were the guinea pig for notice of this time. This is a rather big parcel, but you know that just 2 months ago, we approved new rules that provided that notice must be given to everyone within 300 feet of the property affected. That was in a change from our prior rule that required adjoining, that is next to or touching property owners. So I just want to report on that while I'm telling you that I was given in advance a copy of all the notice documentation. I find that it is in order and that you're free to go ahead and consider this matter. But there were, I think, approximately 60, give or take 1 or 2, property owners that had to be notified. And I think just keep it in mind, we'll be reporting back and forth and we'll probably have some conversations about all this and how it goes. That affects everyone involved, but it provides a great deal more transparency and notice to the public at large. And that is certainly an important consideration. So for the record, you know that. Now, this is different from the minor subdivision. We've already been through a certain portion of this process, which involves filing a concept plan and a development plan and have those reviewed by our administrator, Mr. York, and his department. And when he finds that it's in suitable condition, he sends it on to this body for approval of the primary plat. And so tonight, we're here considering the primary plat. Now, this is not the final plat. It's not a plat that will get recorded. The subdivider and owner will go ahead and make those improvements that they intend to make and come back and submit a secondary plat. The secondary plat also requires approval by this body. And we've been through this process many times. However, our ordinance only requires that there be a public hearing on the issue at this meeting. So we will open this up to the public for their comment at this primary plat, but we aren't required to do so for the secondary plat when it comes back at some future date. Really, the standards that you have to worry about are again similar to the minor subdivision. That is, does this plat meet our subdivision ordinance? If it does, you may approve. If it doesn't, but you find that there are modifications or matters that you could insist upon, you can add those modifications with an approval subject to that. Or you could find that the plat does not meet our subdivision ordinance and you could deny it on that basis. I would finally just like to add that I am adding to the record some additional materials that I used in addressing the notice documentation, made my job easier, and I'll put those beacon materials into the file as part of the record. Otherwise, I would note that the petitioner submitted, I think, 14 documents. He followed our new ordinance very well. I think if you look at the submission, you'll see that we have information that is very helpful to you. I think that we should take a review of this at some time in a future meeting and talk about how well this has taken place now that we've had our first guinea pig, if you will. And with that, I will conclude my remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Hale. Commissioners, any questions?
If I could.
Yes.
I think we talked about this last time, but I would like to ask again, just for the record. I know the drainage plan was the one thing we asked for. Was that again based on the 100-year? I think it's flood, but if I'm saying it wrong, please correct me.
The 100-year floodplain.
Yeah.
100-year, right?
And Mr. Doyle has calculations, and as was mentioned earlier, it's been reviewed by the sanitation district, which was approved.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I get a lot of help these days. Yeah, we're in competition.
Jeez. You look so comfortable over, John. We had to get you up here.
Pardon?
You look so comfortable. We had to get you over.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, yeah, we did our basic drainage calculations based on what's required with the ordinance. 100-year flood against the release rate, a 2-year, 10-year. So this all been approved by the sanitary district. I spoke with Arbor after our other meeting and presented him with my calculations. Everybody seemed to be favorable. Sewer and water are available on the site or at the site. The other utilities, telephone, gas, that type thing are all there.
Correct me if I'm wrong. We're also taking water off the street, John, and in some sumps and bringing it onto the property.
Yeah,
as well.
we're
We're accepting water, if you will.
yes. The curb and gutter, when we get the curb and gutter in, we'll have some inlets in the street, and then back behind we have some dry wells and something to dissipate the water.
Understood. Appreciate it. That was the only question I had. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from commissioners?
Yeah, in reference, there's a statement here that there is a 20-foot sanitary easement between lots 6 and 7 that will service the subdivision. Is that going to be in effect, or is it just the easement? Are they putting in a sanitary system there?
We're going to put in a sanitary sewer.
Yeah, okay.
That will drain back through that easement to the north into the system and the beach walk system, which is under sanitary district control. And then there'll be
sewer built parallel to, and I'll say 50 feet north of Washington Park Boulevard.
Thank you.
Was that? Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
So during primary and secondary, they'll have to work with sanitary district to design that system and install. That's what kind of gives them the buffer between primary and secondary plat. They'll work with sanitary district, they'll come up with construction plans, install, certify that it's built right, the sanitary district that is. Once they come with construction plans and things of that nature and satisfy the sanitary district, then they'll probably ask us to sign off on secondary plat. So it's kind of how the way it works with respect to that will then be dedicated to the sanitary district. It will become a public utility to them. Just for clarification.
A question that occurred to me is I'm not sure how they plan to phase the building of all these homes. But just to address the concerns of the neighbors, I assume it's just not going to be clear cut, because then there's going to be that lag time between the time it's clear cut and the time they start building the houses for when the new drainage would actually be implemented.
Well, this process tonight, if the primary plat is approved, it will approve the 14 lots as platted out there. Then it's just a matter of time. A developer will typically start with one lot. If the developer is going to build, then he'll build some spec homes on it. If they sell off the lots, then it'll be to a new homeowner. But there's no phases to this development. It's just one.
Oh, I see.
It's just one plat of 14 lots, and then as they're developed by the developer and or by prospective homeowners.
Keep in mind they're free forming these bioretention areas, meaning that they're actually going to be retaining trees in these bioretention areas. I think that's the goal of free forming. They've mentioned that last time, which means they're not going to go in and just clear cut these lots. They're trying to, obviously where the homes are going to be built, you're going to lose some trees probably, but the goal is, I think, to really use the bioretention. There's a true bioretention where trees will absorb that water, if you will. And that's hence the free forming of those.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Which should be, obviously, they're going to be out there pounding nails. So yeah, it's going to be a little disturbing, but at least it won't look, where they'll just come in and clear cut everything.
Great. I'll open it up to the public at this point. Any questions, comments from the public related to this petition? Please state your name and address.
Stephen Johnson, 208 Murray Lane in Beach Walk. On the sanitary is that end at Jake Lane? How far is that? Do you have any idea where that tees off at in there?
There's a stub that comes actually out of Jake, if I'm not mistaken. It comes
Does
onto.
it come out over the line? Does it go over the line or? Oh, it does. Okay. That's all I was.
Yeah, it's like right in here. It's I don't know if it's shown on this plat. John, help me out here. There is a stub. It comes over onto this property.
Okay.
Basically, straight south of Mary Lane.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
That's where we supposed to.
Yeah.
There's a manhole there. All of that manhole would be where the dead end. Well, and then it's stubbed out. Okay. About
Stubbed.
15.
Oh, is it?
out of that
Okay.
manhole.
Oh, okay.
So that'd be weird.
They continue on. I saw that on, I didn't know where. Okay. That's all. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, so not hearing any, that public comment period is closed. And next step would be a motion.
Could I interject one or two more questions
Yeah,
real
sure.
quick
Go
before we
ahead,
do
Mike.
that? I was curious, just an informal out of the group that's here tonight, was anyone who was not in the original notifications, but in the second group of notifications here tonight? So for the concept plan, you didn't get one, but did get one for the second one.
I think Beach Walk as a whole, we got one, and then the second one, I got one mailed to my house.
Okay,
You know, so. I don't know if I got one the first, honestly, I don't remember, but I know we got one both times as Beach Walk regularly, and
Sure.
then as we living on, you know, a couple houses away that I got one.
understood. I was just curious how effective the new mailings were, so.
You guys doing that mailing, that's a great idea, because I live in Illinois, and I'm a trustee of religion, we do the same thing, and what you guys are doing, because I think it's great, and some people all of a sudden have no idea what's going on.
Sure.
When it's just properties that are just adjacent, so I do appreciate what you have.
Understood. Thank you.
And if I may comment on that, Mary Lane is not adjacent to the property, so those addresses were not
So those are
notified in the prior one, but they're within 300 feet. So many of them have been notified in this round, but previously the Property Owners Association was notified last on the concept and development. So that probably would have been public information to a lot of them up there. But yeah, there were 50 or so notices for surrounding property owners. There's a lot more involved in notices and a lot more certified mail.
And I'm sorry. And then my second question is, so there is no secondary step for us, Mr. Hale, like there's nothing we're forwarding on to council tonight or anything like that. We're just making an approval, not approval, or approval with additional conditions.
That's correct. And so at this point, the petitioner has 2 years to put this in place and come back with for final approval, if you will, which is the secondary plat. And once that's approved by this body, then that is recorded and that becomes the official subdivision document, creating the new subdivision.
And at that point, that's what goes on to council,
And
correct?
the city council, well, the city council is not involved in this process.
Okay,
We don't need their approval. It's this body that approves these subdivisions.
thank you.
There are a couple other things we'll get some as-built once things are installed. There are a few other things we'll get, but that's later on.
Understood.
Okay, we have somebody who would like to speak, who's watching, Mr. Ham. You're free to speak at this point.
Yes, I was just curious as I'm about a block down the street from this project. Am I going to be affected water and sanitation wise?
Mr. Ham, can you give your address, please?
714 Washington Park Boulevard.
Thank you. Who wants to address that question?
Mr. Ham, affected, can you define it? Like, how do you mean affected? Or like,
I mean,
with respect-
is anything going to change at all from what I have now?
no, water and sewer wise, no.
Okay, during the construction, is anything going to change?
No.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
Yeah, no, nothing's planned to be, there's different backflow preventions. There's different things that happen when we do construction and different stopgap mechanisms that prevent interruption of service, if you will, to some extent. Yeah.
Thank you. That's my only question.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Ham. Any other public comment? Okay, that public comment period is closed. Now I think we're ready for a motion.
I would move for approval of petition 900-22, number 3, finding that it has met our subdivision ordinance standards.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call for the vote. Mr. Balling,
Yes.
Mr. Danquist. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Granquist. I'm so sorry. Mr. Dan, you're
recused
you're
myself.
recused. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. Mr. Gresham,
Yes.
Mr. Klender. Fred,
Yes.
Mr. Lashford,
Yes.
Mr. Zimmer,
Yes.
unanimous, motion approved.
Good luck, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Another step forward. Thank you.
Thank the commission.
Is there any old or new business this evening to be discussed?
I have some new business.
Okay.
I have a new assistant hired, and we have them starting on the 18th of July, and we have an associate planner hired starting on the 5th of July.
Great.
I'm very happy. So I guess in telling you this, that I'll bring them here and we'll introduce them to you guys, let them get to know you. My assistant will probably be helping me out with some things that we've been installed. So hopefully we can get those back up and running and get some things moving forward.
Great.
Did we lose the
I lost
former
Aaron.
new assistant?
I did. I lost Aaron to another community. I think you'll find the new persons or the new people, the new hires, very knowledgeable, very smart people, very well educated as well in the planning field. So it's going to be really nice to have two new employees who kind of can jump right in, if you will.
Final call for any public comment. Public comment is closed. Any other commissioner comments about anything?
How are we looking for a July meeting, Mr. York?
I'm not going to cancel it yet because I have had some requests. But I guess as of right now, I don't have anything formal to give to you. But
Stay tuned.
yeah, I would. There may be some other things that we want to. If I can get, I just got to get some people in. But there may be some things outside of petitions that we talk about. But stay tuned for that. I don't want to
Understood.
cancel it quite yet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I may have some comments on the application process itself, if we want to address that at some future meeting. And
It actually was really good. I've talked to Dan a little bit about the process. We've actually found a few little Scrivener's errors that we gave ourselves permission to correct Scrivener's errors, things of not substance. We're going to correct some of those in there, just bad references, just weird language. But I would like to hear kind of feedback on what went well, what is kind of convoluted, I guess. So I think that'd be helpful. I think it's a much better application, though. I will say that.
Yeah, it was interesting to note that the one petitioner out here from Illinois thought our process was in good standing. So it was good to hear.
Any other comments? Hearing none, we are adjourned for this evening until the July meeting.
This is important. Put it in your file. This is the